Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. We're still in McDonough, Georgia, but I was doing my normal downtime reading and stuff, and I came across an article from FreightWaves, which is a site that I often look at for news about trucking industry, shipping, logistics, etc. And something I saw alarmed me, and I've kind of talked about this quite a while ago. Like, how do you know what the health of your company is? Central Transport closed down this week or last week, leaving like over 1,000 drivers out of work. Now, I think those drivers are all land on their feet at other LTL companies. I think some of their assets are going to be bought out, but they basically went into bankruptcy for no other reason than to just liquidate everything. So, that's a carrier that's been around for a long, long time. And by the way, Jerry Moyes, who was the guy that founded Swift, he had been putting his own personal money into Central, and they still went under. But the company that I want to talk about today, and let me preface this by saying it's pretty rare that I tell people to not go to a company or maybe even to get out of a company. But I'm kind of at that point today with Variant / US Xpress. Now, let me say up front, I'm not here to talk about how it is to be a driver at those companies or that company, because it's all the same company. And I'll get to the Variant thing in a minute. I'm not here to talk about that because I don't know what people are making there. Maybe they're happy. Maybe they have great benefits. Maybe they like their trucks. Maybe they like the routes they run. Maybe there could be any number of things that make people happy to be there. But what I'm talking about is, like, if you're concerned about, is my company going to be around in the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, there's some pretty alarming things going on at US Xpress today. And I want to, and I don't even know if people at the company know this, but the funny thing is US Xpress is a publicly traded company. So all of this information is public record, and in fact, the article in FreightWaves quotes an 8K filing, and an 8K filing is something that must be sent to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and these are searchable on a system called Edgar and probably other sites. But these 8Ks must be sent when a significant event occurs at the company. And so today, a very significant event was announced. And it was USX announcing that Cameron Ramsdale had been terminated. Now, Cameron Ramsdale is a guy who was in charge of all of Variant, but he was also in charge of the OTR legacy division, meaning US Xpress OTR, which, and if I could just do a little sidebar here, which tells me a lot about this Variant nonsense, this company within a company, right? Variant may pay better, what I really think is USX was trying to get to the point where Variant would just take over, and they're probably just gonna try to change the name of the company, and then all those YouTube videos that say USX is this or USX is that or whatever, people are gonna gloss right over because they're gonna be like, oh, well, I'm applying to Variant. But the reason, it just seems odd that the same guy that was in charge of this new and improved, no more BS company is just in charge of the same old OTR company that people don't care for. And I will say that I talked to them one time after I was an experienced driver, and their pay was like incredibly low. I don't know if that changed. I know that Variant supposedly was paying people more, and there were big issues with their retention, and they were hoping that would get better. Now, this is significant personnel change because Cameron Ramsdale was, quote, terminated. But here's the other thing that's bothersome. USX issued a statement today and said, you know, we're still locked into this variant model and doing things differently, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? They didn't name any successor to him, and they didn't name anybody that's a temporary fix, like the shop manager at the Ohio terminal or Bill from Seattle, who's one of their best drivers. I mean, no, like I'm sure someone is making decisions there, but they didn't say who it was. And because they're a public company, they have to disclose stuff like that. Like if they said, oh, we're hiring, you know, I don't know, Ross Perot, rest his soul, then they would have listed that, right? They would have said, oh, we hired Ross Perot to come in and run this thing and get it turned around. So that's kind of interesting to me. And by the way, in my previous life, I worked in the division of corporation finance when I was in law school for a year. I worked at the division of corporation finance at the Securities and Exchange Commission. I've looked at a gazillion of these 8Ks and 10Qs, you know, yeah, so it's, you know, every time something like this happens, you know, it's kind of a, you know, noteworthy. But here's the other thing that happened today. As soon as the announcement about Ramsdale was made, USX stock dropped to $5.69 a share. It just, not that share price necessarily means a lot, but just to give you an idea, KNX, which is Knight Swift Holdings, it trades in the 50s, right? And by the way, that 569 that it dropped to intraday, I don't know what it closed at, but that was a 52-week low. So they're not, and they're down 17%. This is in a target-rich environment. These are like halcyon days for trucking companies. I mean, there's low-hanging fruit everywhere, but they're down. Their share price is down 17% in the last 52 weeks. That is not good, because almost everywhere else that I look in the transportation sector, transportation companies, so other trucking companies, other truckload carriers like Knight Swift Holdings or Heartland Express or JB Hunt, which is getting out of that. They're more of a logistics company, just like just like Schneider, more logistics now than ever before. But everybody's doing well, and yet these guys can't seem like, when it's like shooting fish in a barrel right now. Like I said to somebody recently, I said, you know, an 8th grader with a laptop could freaking sell truckload space in this environment, and they're getting killed. And a lot of their peer organizations have operating ratios below 90. Theirs for the last quarter was 97.8. So if you don't know what operating ratio is, what it basically means is how much does it cost you to make $1 of revenue. So a 97 point, the higher it is, the worse it is, right? So 97.8 means for every $100 of revenue that US Xpress makes, it costs them $97.80 to make it. Their margins suck. And I mean, just to, you know, imagine, if you will, somebody that's like so that basically that means their like margin is like $2.20 on OR, right? So can you imagine somebody that's at a 90 or an 88? They're like 5 times more profitable than USX. Right? So USX is kind of the bottom feeder of the large truckload companies in that regard. But here's another thing, and sometimes these guys are really prescient, sometimes they're wrong, but a lot of times these guys are really prescient. There are only about 5 analysts on Wall Street that follow USX, or at least that were on their quarterly call recently. One of them, and they've received a couple of downgrades. But one of the downgrades they received, the analyst said this. He said, quote, the company missed out on fully participating in the strongest truckload market in a generation. That is a damning critique. That is basically like saying that the management of this company was asleep at the switch. And by the way, the variant thing, that's just, like, you ever go to a restaurant and you want something and then you notice it's in a pan and it's got that layer on the top, and then just as you're ordering it, the person stirs it up and stirs that layer of goop down into whatever it is, the cheese sauce or the soup or chili or whatever it is. That's how variant felt to me. And everybody may say, what the hell do you know, dude? You're a truck driver at Prime. Well, the answer is, I don't know more than, say, some executive at Prime would, but I've looked at a lot of companies over the years. A lot of companies. I've held several securities licenses. I know what I'm looking at, and I know what my standards are. And for a publicly traded company, these are worrying signs. This is cause for concern. And that analyst that I just quoted, he also said that USX has gone through multiple strategy shifts, come back to variant, since its 2018 IPO. It's only 2021. It's like they went public in 2018 and a bunch of insiders in the company got rich off the IPO, but they still don't know what the hell they're doing. This is a company who, I don't think their labor costs are above the average for truckload carriers, especially in the legacy OTR division. Now, it remains to be seen what's going to happen. But if I were a variant, or if I were a USX employee, or even maybe a contractor, right? I would be like, these guys are not well managed. All of these things point to a company whose management team is not on the ball, right? And, oh, by the way, Mr. Ramsdell, he was hired, his last position, he was the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer at Coyote Logistics. And I don't know what his resume looks like. I don't know what he did before he was at Coyote as the Chief Technical Officer, but it just seems weird that you would bring a guy in who really wasn't an operations guy, and didn't have a track record with a large truckload carrier of, cutting costs and being productive, really reducing OR, etc. So that's weird. And then one of the other things the article put is that, Variant's headquarters is in Atlanta as opposed to being up in Chattanooga with USX's. And they're like, yeah, we're right across the street from Georgia Tech. Like, they said this on an earnings call. And my initial reaction was, so what? I know people that went to Georgia Tech and none of them go, yeah, when I graduate, I want to work for a trucking company, right? Like, even if they're quants or they're people that are good at crunching numbers, USX is not going to, or Variant is not going to be their first choice. Doesn't matter if the building is across from campus, because they might be from the West Coast and want to go back to LA or Silicon Valley. And I gotta believe that the analysts on this call, who are often like super smart people, were like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, it's like, it's just fluff. But I just really feel like if you're at USX, because let's be honest, I don't care if your truck says Variant on the side, you're at USX, right? It's all the same company. It's the same pot of money. It's all the same. You're dragging USX trailers. I don't care. But if I was there and I paid attention at all to my company's management and, corporate governance, stock price, I'd be like, I want to find because if you're at a public company, you have an opportunity oftentimes to buy their stock and get it at a reduced price, and It's really cool. They had it at night transportation when I was there. You know, but I just want to be at a company that's more stable. And, you know, I don't care what anybody in management says there. Then the people that matter, the analysts and stuff, they're really bearish on this stock. And so, you know, there are lots of good companies out there, and any truckload carrier should be killing it right now. Any truckload carrier should be killing it if they have a solid management team. So anyway, if you're at that carrier, you know, all is not lost. There are lots of good carriers out there. I'm not here to promote Prime, right? But I will tell you there are lots of good carriers out there that if you got a good driving record and you like to run, I bet you can make more money than you're making there, and be with a company that's a little bit more well managed. So anyway, good luck to all our brothers and sisters out there. And by the way, if you got any questions, comments, I'm happy to hear them. I mean, maybe I'm missing something here, but this is just, you know, it just kind of like piqued my interest a lot. I've been kind of watching them for a while because I just thought the variant experiment was kind of BS anyway, because I thought it was BS to the people that are still at the legacy carrier. It was like, hey, we're starting a new division for experienced people, and we're going to pay them more than we pay you. We're going to buy all new trucks for them, but carry on smartly. It's like, who does that? That's like creating this rift in the company. That's just, it's, you know, it would be like Robert Lowe saying, look, everybody in tanker division is getting a brand new Peterbilt with like 110-inch sleeper on the back, but reefer and flatbed, no. I mean, that would just create bad feelings, and I don't know why you would do that as a management team. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Talk to you later.